This is the Decision Point with Anand Nanduri. Anand, we have a couple incredible NFL football games coming up this weekend. We also have a number of quarterbacks going to be changing teams. There's some complaints from the audience. We got a lot to get to coming up right now. All right, first and foremost, NFL action this weekend. Who you got in these championship games?
We're sticking with the Bengals and the Eagles.
I got Bengals-Eagles.
And I mean, look, it's not – don't be a fan later. You know, like we told you in the preseason, the Eagles are a juggernaut waiting to happen, and they happened. The Bengals were underpriced preseason, and, you know, everybody was considering it a fluke team that, you know, had this one wacky run that, you know, everybody's capable of. Obviously, in a single elim format, anything can happen. But we bet on Howie Roseman, the GM for the Eagles. We bet on the Niners and Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch assembling a roster that would find a way, as they have over and over and over again. And look, the thing is, Kansas City is better than I thought they would be, given the parts that they gave Mahomes, and Mahomes is Mahomes, right? Like we're getting to the point with Pat where the pieces almost don't matter as much, and it's going to drive us fantasy insane, right? Like, especially as we try to acquire assets with a high-powered offense like Kansas City is in Dynasty. It seems to be pretty much Travis Kelce and friends at this point. Like, you know, it's almost ridiculous that he's putting up better numbers with Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And it's just preposterous. I don't even understand how it's possible that he's putting up the numbers that he's putting up. But, you know, these four teams separated themselves, along with, I think you could argue, Buffalo as well, separated themselves as the five-pack that were the class of the NFL. And I'm really glad that, you know, we didn't get some kind of wacky, crazy upset that led to, you know, a team that didn't deserve to be here being here.
Yeah, Buffalo was doing great till that big fart last weekend.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be, you know, as we're talking about this, right? You know, we're going to get into all the teams that actually made the championship games as we should. But I think the thing for Buffalo that we've got to acknowledge is they're asking Josh Allen to do way too much against really good teams. I mean, it's impossible that anyone does better than he did in that 2-game stretch against New England and Kansas City last year, right? And then they asked him to shoulder even more of the load this year, where they're like, oh, okay, you know, we're going to run you even more. We're going to put more on your plate. And the real problem with that becomes, if your offense is one guy going superhuman every week, that's not a reliable process to get you from where you are to where you want to go, right? And Andy Reid makes life easy for Mahomes. On 3rd and 6, he'll formulate him 6 yards, and then he'll let him take the shots on 1st and 10. Whereas Buffalo is forced, because of the way their offense runs, right? They're not able to run the ball at will. And so now you've got 3rd and 8, and you're asking Allen to do impossible things every 3rd down and 8 to extend drives and to make crazy things happen. And he's capable of that, right? And he's capable of that at a much higher rate than most other players in the league are. But asking him to do that over and over and over again is not a sustainable offense, and they've got to do something about that.
Yeah, it's like a tennis player with an incredible forehand against lesser competition. You can just run around that backhand and crush. And that's what you get used to. And then what happens? Your backhand starts to atrophy.
Yep.
Right? That's what ends up happening. And then when you need that backhand against the Bengals, it's just not there. So, but I understand how it happens. You know, everyone can see how that happens when you have such a incredibly powerful weapon to keep the other aspects of your arsenal sharp becomes harder. But I love that you pointed out Howie Roseman, and you mentioned him. You didn't mention Andy Reid when talking about the Chiefs, so I really appreciate that. Eric Moody on Twitter put up 4 pictures. He said, which is the most important to franchise success? Had a head coach, Andy Reid, had a GM, Howie Roseman. a top equity holder in Robert Kraft and a quarterback in Joe Burrow. And I said, well, this is certainly not just these guys,
No,
right?
no,
These aren't the
no.
key positions. These aren't the big four positions that drive success in the NFL. So I said, here's the list. General manager, because Jalen Hurts wouldn't be there without Howie Roseman. This team wouldn't be there. We wouldn't see A.J. Brown in an Eagles uniform without Howie Roseman. So the GM is the one that creates the franchise, right? That puts the players together. That goes out and gets the quarterback. Okay, so the GM's number one for that reason. It's very much a catch-22. Yes, the quarterback is the most important position, but he won't exist on that team unless the GM seeks him out, whether it be in the draft or via trade. So you get GM number one, then the quarterback, then the left tackle, then your primary edge disruptor. So it's not always an edge rusher necessarily. It could be an Aaron Donald, whoever that is. It's that guy, very important. Then your alpha receiver, then your alpha corner. Then down at 10 is the head coach, and then down at 25 is your Robert Krafts and your Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
Who cares? Just guys that have a lot of money, as if that matters. Get out of here. So that's the real list. That's the list. Now, looking at these games, you were also active on Twitter, and you talked about what they're doing in Cincinnati. Can you break down the tactics that they're using to succeed in Cincinnati?
Yeah, so basically the play that functionally drives the bank, every team has their, okay, when we're down to the well and we need to find something that's going to work. Every team has their play. And 989, also known as doubles, is a play that Joe Brady brought to LSU the year that he came down there to be their OC, when obviously Burrow, Chase Jefferson had their magical run, won a national title, greatest college football team of all time, in my opinion. But they brought that play to Cincinnati, right? And it's an old Peyton Manning favorite. Basically, there are two vertical goes on the outside, and the inside receiver has functionally his choice based on coverage between a deep post and an inside dig, about 15 to 18 yards, right? So
that sounds like the perfect option route to give to someone like, Jamar Chase.
So the fun part about this, right, for the Bengals is they move everybody around, right? You'll see Boyd line up at the X and Jamar line up inside. You'll see them flip-flop. You'll see Hayden Hurst sometimes runs the inside route as opposed to whatever. But the alert for this play is basically Jamar Chase getting singled three by one, right? If you get single coverage on Jamar Chase, there's no one on earth that's going to stop him. Sorry, they don't exist. So he's going to throw that ball 100 times out of 100 to Jamar, right? And if you decide to shade coverage or, put a safety over the top of Jamar, now you have T. Higgins on the other side that's essentially getting to play jump ball as a 6'4" receiver. Good luck with that. And if you decide to play ultra coverage, if you decide to go cover 4 and help everyone out at the same time, well, congratulations, you've given 16 free yards to Tyler Boyd or Hayden Hurst. Like the problem that the Bengals functionally that they've created is there are not defensive backs and linebackers that can cover their 4 weapons anywhere. And so they're just picking mismatches at this point, right? Like 989, and then there's a play called drive sail, which obviously, West Coast staple, air raid, whatever you want to call it.
What's the drive sail?
So the drive sail is functionally like, we'll put together, I'll post something about it a little bit after this so that you can kind of see.
Nanduri NFL on Twitter, at Nanduri NFL.
So, basically what it is you've got an alert for a go from your X. And depending on how coverage is, depending on where the DB is, it's either going to be inside leverage, outside leverage. You're either going to run that straight vertical or you're going to run it to the boundary. You've got a corner or flag from your flanker from the inside. And then you've got this deep over or dig, whatever you want, or, deep over, deep cross from your Z. And your Y is going to run what's called a basic, which is basically looks like it's going to be functionally a swing out. And then they come up and over and it's functionally a dig. And the problem that this creates as opposed to 989, right, which is, oh, hey, the Bengals are going back to the well. That's what they're going to call. The problem with this one is they can move anyone anywhere. Higgins can be your inside receiver if you want on this route. Hayden Hurst has played the outside receiver on this route. So you have no idea, right, between these two, functionally, who is getting the ball and what they're going to do. Even though you know it's going to be one of these two, they can just choose at the line of scrimmage and make you wrong in coverage anyway. Like,
and Mahomes doesn't have this luxury because he doesn't have the receivers.
No, right. And I'm sure at some point when you had Kelsey and Hill, right, and even Watkins the year that they had all three, right, the problem that they create is they can make your coverage wrong. If the quarterback is smart enough to know, hey, they're showing this, they might bail into this, but they're probably either going to do this or this. I mean, if your quarterback's smart enough and accurate enough to deliver those balls, I mean, there's not much you can do. They're not going to let you play defense like they used to let you play defense 15, 20 years ago. So, I mean, it's basically 7-on-7 ball at that point, and the Bengals are maybe the best 7-on-7 team in the league.
So this is why this is a pick'em. Even though it's a home game for the Chiefs, this is why the Bengals have been surging. This is why, essentially, Vegas is saying the Bengals are a better team.
Yeah, and the defense, too, right? I mean, you can't talk about Cincinnati's ascension last year and this year without talking about Lou Anarumo and what this defense has done. Because holding Mahomes, and I think the two games they played last year, to a combined 6 points in the second half, that doesn't happen ever. Holding this Buffalo team at home in the snow with Damar Hamlin in the crowd at 10 points. Like, everything was written for this to be Bills Chiefs, and they went in there and kicked their teeth in anyway. They ran the ball at will with 3 backup offensive linemen. I've literally never seen that before.
That was special. Like,
yeah.
Mixon had a great game.
And it's proof, right? It's any of these teams that are actually going to win a Super Bowl. Your quarterback is inevitably going to have a somewhat off day. Can the run game carry him? Your defense is going to have a somewhat off day. Can the offense carry him? The offense is going to have an off day. Can the defense carry him? And with Cincinnati, they're showing you all of the things that the Rams showed you last year in terms of, our quarterback threw 3 interceptions. It didn't matter. Our defense locked them down and we won anyway. Or our defense is struggling today. Our quarterback and receiver have gone for 3 touchdowns a day. We're good. No worries, right? So they're exhibiting the traits that you want in a team in both sides of the ball in terms of winning a Super Bowl. Opportunistic turnovers. You're talking about shut down second half defenses. Like, these are recipes for success. And the only thing that worries me about Kansas City, obviously having Mahomes, is having Mahomes. Like, it's a plus matchup against basically anyone. The only thing that concerns me is, does Kansas City's defense have enough to slow down the Bengals enough to give Mahomes the chances he needs, especially on a bum ankle? I mean, who knows how healthy he is or isn't. We can speculate about that till the end of time. But, like, we'll see once he gets out there just how effective he can be. Because even if he's limited to being a pocket passer and not moving around a whole lot, he's still a pretty special player.
He practiced in full.
Yeah.
So
I'm not
he's not going to be as mobile.
No.
But that's not enough to essentially cede 3 points to the Bengals.
Yeah.
Again, if this were just 2 even teams playing in Kansas City, it would be Chiefs -3. But it's a pick'em now. And it was, last time I looked, it was Chiefs -1. And since Mahomes practiced in full, they've ceded yet another point. So now it's down to a pick'em.
So here's the interesting part about this.
So it's not about the Mahomes injury. That's not what was driving this line. What was driving this line is an understanding of what Kansas City is going to be dealing with.
Yeah, and
it's an impossible situation that they're in.
Yeah, the tough part here for Kansas City is you can't lose this game. It's not about going to the Super Bowl. It's not about the narrative. It's not about anything other than you can't lose 4 in a row to a team that is supposed to be inferior to you, seed-wise every year. You win more games than them, right? But they beat you in every single game that you play them in. That starts to eat at you. Ask any Rams player. Like, there were so many demons exercised in that NFC Championship game last year, because I think it was 8 or 9 in a row. I think out of the 11 times Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay have played have coached against each other the last 11, I think that is the only Rams win. Like, that starts to tear at you over time, right? Like, it becomes a real thing psychologically. Like, Buffalo and Kansas City, right? Like, Buffalo desperately needed to beat Kansas City in the regular season this year, simply because the narrative was going to become, can you beat them when it matters, right? I think we're dangerously teetering on that for Kansas City, but talking about the line, like you were discussing, opening at 1.5 for Kansas City was probably the right line. And then people bet it all the way. I think at one point you got Bengals -2.5, and then it swung all the way back to Chiefs -1. Now you're looking at a pick 'em. This is about as much movement as you'll see on a championship game line. Obviously, some of it has to do with speculation on Mahomes' health. I don't think it actually has to do with Mahomes' health. It's more the bets that are being placed in speculation about that. But, I mean, Chiefs -1.5 is probably about the right line. And, the fact that anybody that really wanted to, if you really wanted to back the Chiefs, the fact that you got anywhere near Chiefs +3 is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I think that the difference is Eli Apple. Eli Apple is a proper alpha corner. He runs a 4.4. He was a top 10 pick, super late bloomer. Like, he just now figuring out the position. This is the Eli Apple the Giants drafted years ago. What we're seeing now is what a true lockdown corner and how that can change the defense and make everyone's job easier. Trent McDuffie is going to be locked up with Jamar Chase. Trent McDuffie is 5'11", 195.
Yeah,
he's not a prototypical alpha corner. He's very good, right? His coverage rating on Player Profiler is +11.3, which looks at his yards allowed per game, pass breakups. Those metrics are all on Player Profiler. 1.7 yards of separation at target. That's top 30. But McDuffie has allowed top 10 in the league in receiving yards to opposing wide receivers. So he's good, but not great. Neither of these secondaries have what you would call exceptional corners, top 10 corners in the league. According to our rankings, the Cody Carpentier cornerback rankings on playerprofiler.com, subscribe.
Cody does great work.
Yeah, it's amazing. But the fact that they're performing so well against opposing quarterbacks is a testament to the scheme. It's a testament to also the safety play and that how both of these secondaries are playing together. But at this point, I think you would argue, okay, the Bengals secondary is operating at just a bit higher level, and I think that's the difference. The difference is the Bengals have a better secondary and they have a better receiving core.
Mm-hmm.
And if the passing game is what wins and you have a Burrow versus Mahomes, two elite quarterbacks facing off, well, the secondary in Cincinnati is better at suppressing opposing wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs in the passing game. And then they also have the best receivers in the NFL.
Yeah.
This is why. This is why the pick is Bengals.
And the other thing, too, that I think gets glossed over from time to time, right? Daxton Hill was drafted to replace Jesse Bates, and now they're playing back there together because they got Bates back basically as a mercenary on a 1-year deal, right? And then on top of that, this year, their plan was for their corners to be Cheeto Awuzie and Eli Apple. And instead, now thrust into the spotlight is someone who should get a lot more recognition than he has, rookie Cam Taylor-Britt.
Mm-hmm.
And Sunday was his best game by far. And like what a moment as a rookie to have your best game against, going into Buffalo, very emotional scene. You know what that team is capable of. And they just went there and knocked him out in round 1, which, all the credit to Lou, all the credit to Joe and Zach and Brian Callahan and I mean, that was the kind of game that leads you to believe that's the kind of game that you can go into and revalidate another Super Bowl run.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning Cam Taylor-Britt, because one of my favorite, if not absolute favorite positions to select in a particular round is fast cornerbacks, athletic cornerbacks in round 2.
Oh, yeah.
That is what we talk about this in the offseason, right? Around the NFL draft, I'm always like, I'm probably, if it's me, I'm going to go corner here, right? And Cam Taylor-Britt runs a 4.38. Right now, he's not as fast as the guy that we loved. The guy that we really wanted. Do you remember the guy that we really wanted who ended up exceeding all expectations for Seattle?
Tariq Woolen.
Tariq Woolen fell to the 5th round.
Yeah,
we had him mocked into the 2nd round. It was like Tariq Woolen should be a mid-2nd rounder. He was the corner we talked about the most as a mid-2nd rounder. And I remember we were in Vegas and he's falling. And we kept having him in the top of our list. So like, okay, so Tariq Woolen, definitely best player available still. He runs a 4.28.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he's one of the most searched for players in the Player Profiler database. He had a top 25 coverage rating as a rookie.
Yeah.
He had a 50% catch rate allowed.
Yeah. I mean, he's talking about a phenomenal season.
Yeah,
right?
Only 0.17 fantasy points allowed per cover snap was number 6 in the NFL.
Jesus
for
Christ.
A rookie.
Wow.
For a rookie. Okay, so it's that formula. If you're sitting down and you're putting players into baskets and you're saying, okay, this is the type of position you should be drafting in this round. This is typically where you're going to get value, right? And the 2nd round, mid-2nd round, late 2nd round is where the Bengals grabbed Taylor-Britt. Boom. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, time and time again.
And that's the thing, right? Is you can, much like you can never have enough offensive line depth, you can never have enough DB depth. Because, I mean, teams are hitting you with now a 3rd wide receiver, a tight end. I mean, you've got to have 4 or 5 guys that can cover, and that includes your safeties, right? Like having a guy like Taylor-Britt be able to hold up on a Gabe Davis for basically an entire game is a big part of the reason that they were able to do what they did. I mean, you saw what he did to Kansas City last year when Kansas City didn't have a number 2 that could hold up to him. Cincinnati invested really wisely given what they had draft capital-wise. Like, I mean, you can't say enough about what Cam Taylor-Britt has done.
I just can't believe that Kansas City is back, having lost their best corner, Charvarius Ward, and their best wide receiver. So if these are the units that really define and drive wins and losses, define team quality.
Yeah.
And you're going to lose Ward and Hill and still go right back to the AFC Championship game.
Hosting it, too. That's the crazy part.
That is impressive. And I was thinking about, okay, talking about offensive linemen, I prefer to get my offensive lineman in round 1.
Yeah.
And the best example of a late round 1 pick where it's like you're just hoping that a guy with this profile falls to is Christian Darrisaw.
Yeah.
So Christian Darrisaw, a couple of years ago, 2021, he went with the 23rd overall pick, and we had him mocked in the top 15. Cody loved him because Cody, he lives in Roanoke, so Virginia Tech. He knew all about this guy, and then his favorite team was Minnesota, so it was a perfect match. Just remember, Cody was that was a major. I think people were hurt in the room with his fist bump when Darrisaw was selected. But that is the equivalent. Like the late 1st round anchor left tackle, that is the equivalent of a Taylor-Britt in the 2nd round. You get your franchise left tackle at the end of the 1st round. These types of picks are out there. They're hanging around out there as long as if you're focused on the right details and you're not focused on need, right? Yeah. If you're focused on need and you're like, oh, we really need a safety, you might overlook Darrisaw. Right? Because there's a really good safety on the board. I want to get that guy. Yep. No. Fuck need. If a guy like Darrisaw is there, you pick him. Right? If a guy like Cam Taylor-Britt or a Tariq Woolen is there on day 2, you pick him. I don't care how many cornerbacks, because the next year you could lose your Charvarius Ward alpha corner to the 49ers, and no problem. We can backfill him very easily. So that's exactly what happened. Cincinnati lost Uze.
Yep.
Right? And they're headed right back to the Super Bowl which is pretty amazing. And I think we both believe the Eagles are going to make it happen. They're at home.
Yeah,
they have the superior team and the superior quarterback. It's going to be very difficult to imagine the 49ers winning that game. I can't believe the spread is only Eagles minus 2.5. That's my favorite bet, is just take the Eagles.
Take the Eagles to cover.
Yeah, we took the Eagles to cover last week. Worked out.
Stylistically, this is a really interesting game because functionally these teams operate rather similarly. It's just basically two teams that go in and just say, hey, we're going to beat the shit out of you.
Right.
And our pass catchers are just better than any DB you have. Well, what happens when you put the two of them together, right? Like, we're going to see.
We've talked about this. It's shocking how similar the personnel is.
Yeah.
Where you have you have the front sevens that wall off the run, but you also have true alpha corners, right?
Yep.
You have Slay, you have Ward, and you have thumper safeties.
Yeah.
Right?
Whether
You've
it's
got Goddard, who's
Johnson.
like a lesser Kittle.
Yeah.
Right? So he's just like a little bit slower, a little bit less athletic, but very similar otherwise to George Kittle. Yep. And then you've got Debo and A.J. Brown. You've got Ayuk and Devontae Smith. Down the board, the similarities are striking until you get to this one position, Anand. You get to this one position and the similarities evaporate.
Yeah.
Right? They are vaporized. That position is?
Quarterback.
Ah, that's the difference. That's the difference.
I mean, look, it's what San Fran and Purdy have done this year is really, really special.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing a great job.
But it's
all the best.
There is a Grand Canyon between Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts in terms of what they're capable of doing on their own without these pieces. We saw what Jalen Hurts was able to do last year without an A.J. Brown, right? Like, he's really, really special football player and has grown way, way, way into that role much faster than I ever could have anticipated. But, I mean, if somebody asks you, would you rather have Brock Purdy or Jalen Hurts, that's not even a question.
Just look at their college resumes.
That's not.
Look at what Jalen Hurts did at Alabama and then again at Oklahoma, right? Going to the NCAA college football playoffs.
Yep.
Winning championships.
3 times, I think, actually.
And then Brock Purdy at Iowa State, just managing the game. Right?
Yep.
He's fine. Right.
Yep.
He was well regarded. I mean, after his sophomore season, put up 4,000 yards.
Yeah. After that sophomore year, there were people talking about him in like day 1, day 2 territory, and then the wheels completely fell off after that.
He was awesome. That's probably who he is. Or something happened where they were unable to surround it with any kind of weapons at all. They became a run-first offense, running the offense through Breece Hall. And they're like, hey, just throw it to your running back and get out of the way. Right? That's what they decided to start doing. Okay, cool. Right? Fine. But fortunately, we had that sophomore season in 2019 to see him put up the 4,000 yards at Iowa State.
Yeah.
And I mean, 65% completion percentage. Even the touchdown interception ratio was impressive. The guy never threw 10 picks. Even when they asked him to throw the ball 475 times, still kept his interceptions down at 9. That shows the decision-making. But they also had, the requisite arm strength and sneaky rushing ability. He ran for well over 1,000 yards in his college career. So it was a travesty that he fell to pick 41 in the 7th round, Mr. Irrelevant. That was insulting. He's anything but irrelevant. But, there's no Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I was going to say, bringing Brock Purdy to a Jalen Hurts fight is a little different than asking him to take on Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and, the Cowboys franchise that's just been underachieving for, 2.5 decades now?
That was a bummer.
Yeah.
That game was a bummer for Cowboy fans.
That was
just
a bummer.
A bummer. You could just see like the air leaking out of them in the first half.
It's like
they knew it. Cowboys fans knew it. They knew this isn't it. This isn't it. Oh no.
And that's the thing.
And then the Tony Pollard injury, and you had commenters on my top 10 takeaway show. You're not going to mention the Tony Pollard injury. The reason they didn't give the ball to Pollard is because he was hurt. You didn't see the injury. You don't watch football. And I was like, what? Excuse me. Yes, I know Tony Pollard was injured. I just didn't have a takeaway about it. And the statistics that I was laying out were, hey, these are games in which the Cowboys have lost. And what do we see time and time again? It's because Tony Pollard is not as involved as he could be or should be. And in this particular case, we all saw him go down. And because you couldn't feed him in the second half because he had a broken leg.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that Dallas lost the game. That was, if you think that just because I didn't mention the injury, that I didn't know the injury happened, sometimes we as hosts inadvertently forget to say the obvious because we're assuming we're all sharing a brain. It was just like you earlier, right? When you were talking about the drive sale. And I was like, can you just please explain the drive sale? Like, drive sale, it's a staple, right, of the air raid offense. And I'm like, well, Anand, can you just not assume that we all know what the drive sale is and explain it? Right? I assume everyone knew that Tony Pollard broke his leg.
Yeah.
Of course. Now, again, I will say it again. I knew on Monday, while recording the Top 10 Takeaways show, that Tony Pollard had a broken leg. I just didn't have a take about it. I think that he's going to be back. It was only since then that they've talked about Bijan Robinson going to Dallas. Mel Kiper's first mock comes out, and he has Bijan Robinson going to Dallas because this is one of the few franchises that is running back obsessed. And
yeah,
it is a Texas football player. So it's a local kid that Dallas is very familiar with. Can you see the Dallas Cowboys going out and drafting Bijan Robinson?
I mean, you and I would never, ever do that, but it is the most Jerry Jones thing that exists. Do you remember? I mean, remember, they had Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, and Jerry hit the button and said, hey, we're drafting CD Lamb, right? This is the exact same situation, just at running back.
It's a good decision.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think this one would be, but
they can get out of it. They can walk away from Ezekiel Elliott. It's just $10 million of dead cap.
But you're probably going to have to take Bijan in round one. And with I mean, if they, okay, so like, let's say they let Zeke walk, right? You're probably going to attempt to re-sign Tony Pollard, right? At least that would, conventional wisdom would suggest that's what you do, right? Especially if you're letting Zeke go. But
right.
Either
they
way,
save
honestly,
$6 million of cash by cutting Zeke, and they'd have to absorb a cap hit just over $10 million.
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I think that drafting Bijan Robinson does not solve their problems. So I personally would not do it. But
I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah.
They're not saving enough money.
No, they're not saving enough money, and Zeke and Pollard together are efficient enough that you don't need to waste a top 25, top 30 pick on a running back. Like, there are isolated instances where it makes sense. If you're a team that is at the closing window of an all-pro quarterback, like, he's 38, 40, whatever, right? And you are trying to go all in for 1 or 2 years, then it makes sense. But Dallas is not that team. They're not there. And they have 2 capable running backs on their roster right now, one of whom we would argue is the engine that, is functionally the thing that makes their offense go. And
that's Tony Pollard.
Yeah, and that's Tony Pollard.
That's Tony Pollard, and they know this. And Tony Pollard's broken leg actually just made it more likely that he ends up in Dallas.
I agree.
In 2023, because the market is going to be
hesitant.
more hesitant
more hesitant for sure. And the
to
other thing
sign
too
a guy
is,
coming off a broken leg, especially knowing how many other running backs are on the market. When you have Josh Jacobs and Miles Sanders, there's so many quality running backs that are going to be up for free agency this year, including David Montgomery. Yes, Tony Pollard's more dynamic than all of those guys, but the broken leg is an equalizer.
and the other
it just
part
makes it more likely that he ends up going back to Dallas for a better value than they would have had to pay him had he been healthy and had a great game.
Yeah,
I think he would have had a good game. I think
I agree.
He is a true difference maker at running back, one of the very few in the league. That was my larger point. And now I do have a take. I didn't have a take at the time. I admit it. When I turn the camera on a Monday, all my takes for the week are not formulated yet. I do my best. Most of the time, I give people 20 takes for the price of 10. But of course, there has to be people on social media complaining or at least suggesting that I missed huge, important details. Now, I will say, though, because the Chiefs game was a night game and it was not the game that I watched as intently as the Cowboys game, I missed the Patrick Mahomes high ankle sprain. I was not aware that that was a big deal or thought to be a big deal, and then it turned out he practiced in full on Wednesday, and they've been saying it's not a big deal, but there was a 24-hour period there where it was thought to be a big deal, and I missed it. Like that, I didn't know. But I love that. That's one of my favorite things when you get criticism as a creator of content, when you're putting your thoughts and opinions out there in the world. It's funny where it's like, well, you almost got me, motherfucker. You buzzard. You almost got me. There was an injury that I completely spaced on, but it wasn't the Pollard injury, you asshole. It was actually the Mahomes injury, and it turned out not going to matter.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how much it matters. I mean, he definitely had an ankle sprain, and we'll see how much it impacts him, right? It may be nothing. It may be something, but we're not going to know until, whatever it is, 6:30 on Sunday.
Would he have practiced in full if it was significant at all?
I mean, it's the AFC Championship game. He's going to be practicing in full in a wheelchair if he has to.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. So, okay, maybe there's something more to it. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll continue to
monitor,
pick the Bengals regardless.
Yeah. Same.
Picking the Bengals
Agreed.
with Patrick Mahomes assumed healthy. So I'm certainly going to pick the Bengals if he's unable to plant with the same level of thrust and confidence. Oh, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and look, it's a lot to do with Mahomes and his weapons and the fact that this, I think, is going to be yet again a really good game. Every single game that they've played in the last 2 years has ended with the Bengals winning by 3. So if someone out there is looking for an exacta, you're going 4 in a row. Good luck.
That's right. Now, to be clear, if it were me and I could save $6 million in cash and $5 million against the cap by cutting a running back, you're goddamn right I'd cut that running back.
Yeah, especially when he's the second most important running back on your team.
That's right. So what I would do is cut Zeke, extend Pollard, and draft a running back in round 5 and maybe draft another running back in round 7.
Mm-hmm.
To
just fill out the room,
fill out the roster, and get the requisite
different
depth.
Body types. Yeah.
Right. The last thing I would do is draft Bijan Robinson. I would keep Elliott and eat that $5 to $6 million.
Yeah.
Before I would draft Bijan Robinson with a first-round pick.
Yeah,
we just got done talking about the trade-off of drafting a Kadarius Toney or a Josh Jacobs. These types of players that go in the first round that have no business going in the first round. The trade-off is Christian Darrisaw. That is the trade-off. Year in, year out, it's those types of players that you're foregoing when you get mesmerized by the sexy skill position player right? With the whiz bang athleticism.
Oh yeah, and I mean this is
You
like
miss
we
out on
said-
Darisaw.
I mean,
I would never let that. If it were me, I would never let that happen.
Yeah, but we're talking about Jerry Jones. We're not
We're
talking
talking about Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
He's not cutting Ezekiel Elliott. They're bringing back Pollard. There are people in Dallas with cooler heads, and they appreciate Pollard. They know what they have in Pollard. I've heard from people that know people in Dallas that they know what they have in Pollard. So for those reasons, they're not drafting Bijan in round 1. I hope Bijan goes in round 1. I don't want to say goodbye to the first-round running back. I still want there to be the completely and utterly incompetent franchises out there drafting running back in round 1. I don't want that to end. Those days, they're too good. They're too good.
And then there's such easy picks to criticize in the moment because you know who's available, right? It's like we talked about last time. One of the most fun exercises we get to do every year at the draft is, we go out, we have a good time after the end of round 1, and you wake up the next morning and, you go through all the stuff, whatever sheets we're looking at and kind of go through the draft and you're like, holy fuck, T. Higgins is available at the top of round 2. What? How did this happen?
That's who you forego.
Right?
Running back in the first round, you forego T. Higgins. It's a mistake. It's always a mistake forever and ever and ever. Amen.
And I mean, we'll continue to preach the gospel of having a top 40 pick. Those first 8 picks in the second round for guys that should have been first rounders anyway, because 7 or 8 teams whiffed and took someone that shouldn't go in round 1 anyway. Those if you draft well, if you are a competent front office, those first 8 picks in the second round might as well be first round picks.
There's typically true difference making offensive lineman, oftentimes a guard or a center in that spot.
Interior
There's typically a sub 4.4 alpha corner there.
Yep.
And a potential alpha wide receiver always lingering in that area.
Yep.
Jimmy Garoppolo was a second-round pick.
Yes, he was.
And Jimmy Garoppolo has been rumored to be on the move in this offseason. There's a number of quarterbacks that are potentially changing teams. Potentially Lamar Jackson. Potentially Tom Brady. Potentially Aaron Rodgers. Definitely Derek Carr. Definitely Ryan Tannehill. Definitely Matt Ryan if he's not retiring. But Jimmy Garoppolo is interesting because Jimmy Garoppolo is no good. He has been outplayed by Mr. Irrelevant, which tells you that he's, less than irrelevant?
Oof.
Wait, what's less than irrelevant?
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right, so you're less relevant than Mr. Irrelevant, and yet teams are lining up to trade for you. There's a lot of room. Is this does he have a great agent? Do you think that's what's going on? Or do you think that teams really do want him?
I think that teams fall in love with the idea that a middle-class quarterback can get them where they want to go. Where it's just, our quarterback play has been so bad that if we even get basically average to slightly below average, we're going to be okay, which is stupid. Because for everyone that wants to joke about, the situation that Dallas is in, Dak Prescott is their guy. There's no question about that.
That's
the Eagles have their guy in Jalen Hurts, right? And then if you look, but in the NFC, right, you can get away with.
Who would you rather have if you were starting a franchise?
Right this moment? Oh God, that's tough. I'd probably lean Dak for barely, but Jalen's coming. I'd lean Dak barely, but Jalen's coming. As far as
I'm going to go Jalen Hurts.
You're going Jalen already?
Yeah, I'm going Jalen Hurts.
Seen enough?
What do you mean already?
It's been a year. I don't know that you would not have taken Jalen over Dak last year. I'm just
Dak
saying.
has experienced lower body injuries, mid body injuries, and arm injuries.
Yep.
And did not look himself last weekend.
That last week was horrible.
And
that
is
was
coming off a year where he led
bad,
the league in interceptions. He's a number of years older than Jalen Hurts. And so Jalen Hurts has these years ahead of him, his prime years, where he can be a true dual threat quarterback and help your team win games in a way that Dak cannot.
Yeah, he can't. You just can't do that anymore. But for the moment, we'll see what Jalen does through the end. It's just
I didn't expect you to say Dak. I love Dak.
I do too.
I mean, I'm a raging Dak apologist.
Yep.
But Dak over Jalen Hurts is pretty hot.
You got to remember, right? Dak's shown this to us over a period of time, whereas Jalen really exploded on the scene, and he's been awesome. There's no denying that. It's just a matter of, we need to see it. I personally would need to see it for more than 1 year, which I think he will do.
Okay.
I think he will.
The year before didn't count.
The year before I would have taken Dak over him. So I mean,
those college years didn't count.
The college years absolutely count. I think the thing that most impresses me about Jalen.
You're a hard man to fully impress.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it takes time.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It takes time.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, but Jimmy Garoppolo is just a canary in the coal mine. Whatever team trades for him, signs him, is rotten.
Matt, who most wanted to sign him this year?
I remember it was like after week 1.
Remember, Trey Lance was, the next thing, and
Trey Lance
Jimmy
was healthy.
Yep.
Jimmy was despondent on the bench, and teams were circling. There was one team circling most fervently, most aggressively, and it may be the worst franchise in the entire league. Certainly the worst owner, right? Yeah, in terms of equity leadership, the absolute worst, maybe in all of sports, Dan Snyder and the Washington Commanders.
So
they wanted him. They wanted Garoppolo bad.
This is the perfect example of what we're talking about with a team that falls in love with a middle-class quarterback. They try something different once, and then they just fall right back into it. So they went out and got Alex Smith, who was, for a while, a B-plus quarterback, like a really good player, obviously horrific leg injury. So the next year they draft Dwayne Haskins. Congratulations. You did the right thing. You made the right move. It didn't work out. The player was wrong. He just didn't work out in Washington. And that's fine. If you miss on the first,
there is fine. Yeah, you look at other quarterbacks that have slotted in that spot, Mac Jones, Aaron Rodgers a bit later.
Yeah,
there's been big hits in that zone. There's been big misses, but there's been big hits.
There's no problem with that.
The problem is, though, Washington, they're drafting at slot 16. I don't think there's going to be a top 4 quarterback available. Anthony Richardson likely gone by pick 16. This is why they've gone from Alex Smith to Ryan Fitzpatrick to Taylor Heineke to Carson Wentz. They've been in the ultimate quarterback purgatory drafting at pick 16 every year.
Yeah, and so your choices are either double down and move up and go get someone, or do what the Eagles and the Niners have done and just try to develop guys that you take in later rounds, like they did with Heineke, obviously an undrafted free agent. But the problem is, the ceiling on guys that you take in round 5, 6, 7 they're not going to lift you out, right? They're not going to lift you out of quarterback purgatory that you're in right now. It's very unlikely that a 5th, 6th, 7th round quarterback hits. Yeah, we're seeing some success from Purdy. That's also situational based, right? I don't think Washington has the team that San Fran has, not by a long shot. And so you need somebody to escape that, quarterback middle class or quarterback lower class. And the problem is trying to find them in free agency over and over again. People don't like your owner. Historically, your franchise has been relatively incompetent. They've never gotten the quarterback position right. It was right with RG3 and you screwed his knee up. Then you blew up having Shanahan, LaFleur, and McVay on the same coaching staff and let them all leave town. Like the last decade plus of the Washington football team, Commanders, whatever you want to call them, the fighting Dan Snyders, have been an abject disaster. And it starts and ends with quarterback, obviously, but everything around it has also been absolutely atrocious. And the really sad part is the roster now is actually pretty decently good. They just don't have the draft capital to go get a Bryce Young, a CJ Stroud, a Will Levis, and Anthony Richardson. So now your choices are either, go find somebody in free agency. God bless them if they try. Because this screams to me, like Washington screams to me overpaying for Derek Carr. Like, I can't get the image out of my head of Washington overpaying for Derek Carr.
It would be so Washington to go after Derek Carr.
It would be the most Washington thing possible. And this isn't to say Derek Carr's a bad quarterback, but he's in that middle class, maybe in the upper end of that middle class of NFL quarterbacks. But Derek Carr is not going to be the guy that lifts you out into Super Bowl range. It's not going to happen. And that would be the most Washington signing of all time, which is, hey, we've got our guy.
There is one quarterback who is about to hit free agency, who's a real difference maker we could build around, a franchise quarterback who could elevate them. They'd make the playoffs with this guy.
Of course they'd make the playoffs.
Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they could convince Lamar Jackson's mom to sign in Washington.
I doubt it.
No?
I doubt it. Would you?
It's just down the street, man. Don't have to move. Mom,
Matt,
we
Matt, if
don't
it was
need to
your
back
kid,
up.
Are you gonna put your child's financial future in the hands of Dan Snyder's Washington Commanders?
Soon to be Jeff Bezos?
Yeah. At that point, call me. But until then, fuck no.
Yeah, she's like, well, everything's. You could think of this like, you could do this big 3-way deal where it's like, with all these contingencies. Hey, once Bezos has the team, we'll sign. So then they're scrambling to sell the team, before, so they can get Lamar and they line up all the deals. Never going to happen. That would require way too much competence. Never going to happen.
Would be fun to talk about, though.
Do you believe Lamar is staying in Baltimore?
I think he probably will ultimately leverage everyone else's offers into staying in Baltimore. I think the fact that they were willing to fire Greg Roman goes far enough. I think they've finally seen the light where it's, hey, we have this $300 million quarterback. We're going to ask him who to hire. I think someone put out a tweet the other day saying that, that Lamar will be involved in who they hire as their next OC. Yeah, no fucking shit.
As they all should be.
Yeah, no fucking
all
shit.
All franchise-level quarterbacks should be the deciders of who coaches them.
Yeah.
They're the professionals. Does a tennis player get to pick his coach? Yes. Yeah. So why can't football players pick their coach? Doesn't make any sense.
No. And the other part of this, too, is who is going to know who can help him more than Lamar? If you gave Aaron Rodgers a book of offensive coordinators that were available, and you're like, hey, who do you think could help you the most? You don't think he knows fucking better than you do? Like,
it shouldn't take a player being 44 years old, with close to 25 years of NFL experience before you trust him to make a coaching hire. Like Tom Brady has been heavily involved in the hiring process of the coaching staff in Tampa. But that's the only quarterback we know. But listen, these are adults. You don't have to turn 40 to make these kinds of decisions. They know.
And the other thing,
Dak knows.
Matt, the other hilarious part about it is you have, by the end of this Lamar deal, they will probably have close to $200 million invested in him. How much money are you investing in your goddamn offensive coordinator? If he sucks, fire him. Who cares? Which one of these two are you going to listen to? The offensive coordinator you're paying $2 million a year, or the quarterback you're paying $50?
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Like in Denver, let Russell Wilson pick the coach.
Yeah. What?
What are you doing? Look at the alternative of you interviewing coaches and thinking that as the equity holder, just because you have a bunch of money, you think you know football.
Jesus Christ, man.
Right? Let the guy that actually knows football better than almost anybody, Russell Wilson, pick the coach.
And if it sucks, it sucks. So be it. live with that
let
decision.
Justin Fields pick his own coach.
Yeah, live with
let
that decision.
Kenny Pickett pick his own offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
You can't get better than Mike Tomlin as a head coach. Not that I think that players should be picking the head coach. You set up a head coach and be like, hey, we'll tell you who the coordinators are once we consult with the players.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you can see what happens when an offensive coordinator starts to buy into the skill set, because every quarterback is different. Like, as much as we like to comp them, every quarterback is a little bit different, right? Like, and
not all of them.
There are the Kirks.
Right. There
many
are
variations
some
of Kirk
quarterbacks
Cousins.
that are strikingly similar to one another.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm saying outside of those guys, if you have a guy with a special skill set, right, which if you're talking about an elite quarterback, they typically have a special skill set, whatever that skill set is. When you get a guy like Luke Getsy in Chicago that by week 7, 8 figured out, Justin, if it's not there, run. I do not want you throwing deep sails and overs to Velus Jones covered by a number 1 corner. Get the fuck out of there. Run. Right? And suddenly the Bears started scoring 30 points a game. The Bears, guys, they're like maybe a mile and a half from here.
Well, that's partly because their defense was so bad. But I hear you.
It's crazy, right? And so once you realize just how much having the right offensive coordinator for a quarterback matters, of course they should choose their own.
Yeah.
Who knows better than them what they need?
Yeah, I want to hear a news report that Justin Fields is interviewing offensive coordinators.
Oh, I don't think they're going to lose Getsy.
I'm just saying, whoever, Trevor Lawrence,
Justin
picking
Herbert,
the young quarterbacks. I don't.
Justin Herbert,
right? Yes, okay. Kirk Cousins
God.
has 10 years of experience, and he gets to pick his offensive coordinator. That should go without saying. I mean, that's not how it happens. That's not how it works.
Of course not.
He is somewhat involved. He is consulted at a level. He's at least informed about the choices, and his feedback is solicited. That is for these quarterbacks that are making $30 million that are in their 30s. That's as far as it goes. They're not the ones that are actually picking, but they're consulted.
Yeah.
They're in the room. I'm saying these quarterbacks that teams should be building around that are in their 20s, they should just own the process of deciding who the offensive coordinator is going to be. That would be a radical shift. But Tom Brady, we talked about Tom Brady. What's the probability that he leaves Tampa?
I think it's high.
Like 80%?
I think it's high. I'd say somewhere 60 to 70%. But I think, what does Tampa have to offer at this point? You have Evans and Godwin. You have an aging defense. You have a line that's getting beat up and ransacked by multiple teams in the league, including the Bengals last year. I mean, there is.
Where's he going? Where's he going?
I know where you want him to go.
Well, I want him to go to Tennessee or New York.
To the Jets?
To the Jets. I want him to go to the Jets or the Titans. I think those would be the two most fun places, but that may not be the most likely. What's the most likely landing spot?
This is kind of a cop-out answer, but wherever Sean Payton ends up.
Well, Sean Payton we heard he could end up in Miami, but that it looks like they're gonna stick.
They're gonna stick with Mikey.
They're gonna stick with McDaniel, but the conventional wisdom has Brady going to Las Vegas
with McDaniels, which would, I mean, there are similarities between the Raiders team that's assembled at the moment and the Buccaneers team that he took over. I just don't think the defense is anywhere near as good in Vegas as the one that he inherited.
Vegas has pass rush. Vegas has some playmaking corners. They do need to improve the secondary first and foremost, but they do have the pass rush.
The major concern, obviously, without question, is the rest of that division, right? I mean, if Denver gets it together, holy mother of God, like, you really want to play Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes twice a year?
It's a difficult decision. He's going to have to create a whole matrix with pluses and minuses. If I'm him, my logic would lead me to dominating the AFC South with my former teammate. That's what I would do, but that's not what the audience believes he's going to do. Most people have him locked into the Raiders.
Vegas. The thing that, I mean, without this Brock Purdy magical run, I mean, I think there would be a lot more fire about him going home to San Fran, because I really honestly do believe that in his heart and I think I really truly believe in his heart at some point he wanted to put that jersey on. I really do.
He could, he's a Machiavellian character behind the scenes. Yeah. He could do it. He could pull it off.
I would, you know what the thing is, division rivals, I'm supposed to hate the Niners, but I love everything about their process. I love their head coach. I love their general manager. And I would just, for 1 year, just give me 1 year of Brady.
Can you imagine, they have the paparazzi is taking pictures of Tom Brady outside Trey Lance's house?
Forget that, dude.
Outside Trey Lance's house. And because what he would do is you'd sit down with Trey Lance and be like, listen, I'm Joe Montana. You're Steve Young. Okay, you're going to sit for another year, and you're not going to be a starter right away, right? Because you're going to have a bit of a delayed start to your NFL career. That's because you had to develop in your first year, and then you had an injury, and then you get to experience my mentorship in year 3. Here's what I want to do. We're going to be together all the time, you and me. We're going to go to parties, high-end parties. We'll take you to the Met Gala, right? I'll make sure you're invited. We're going to get you on the right lists. And then we're going to be working out every morning. I have a stretch guy. I have a nutritionist. I'm going to give you access to all my people, right? And the moment I retire, you're going to be poised to become a superstar. Let's go do this. Now, you could see the sales pitch, because he would have to convince Trey Lance.
Yeah.
And then he goes to, and then he would go to the 49ers and be like, okay, Trey's on board. Jimmy's gone. Brock's going to, go back into a pumpkin. And we're going to win a championship, because clearly if we go play the tape of that game against Philadelphia, you're a quarterback away. It's an easy pitch.
Look, there's so many hilarious angles to the storyline. One, obviously Brady coming home would be cool. The Trey Lance angle is cool. But if you were Jimmy Garoppolo, getting your career stomped on yet again by a 45-year-old in a different space, right? You left New England so that could be his space, and then he comes back home to San Fran and stomps all over everything that you've built. That'd be so funny.
I would love it. Now, what about Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers has a big bloated contract. And let's just talk about this contract for a minute. So in 2023, okay, he will earn a base salary of just $1.165 million. That's it. Yep. But then the signing bonus is $58 million.
Yeah, guaranteed team option, right?
So they're paying him $60 million this year.
Yeah,
with this team option that takes effect in mid-March. Mm-hmm. And my understanding is that's to give him time to decide if he wants to retire. But assuming it's his option, if he wants to come back, boom, he comes back, and they'll pay him $60 million.
Yep. So basically, him getting cut is not an option. They would owe $100 million, because that guarantee, quote unquote, would accelerate this year plus the $40 million they already owe.
A guaranteed player option, which would then count against the cap.
It would just accelerate.
So they cannot cut him.
They can't cut him. It's
It's
like $99 million if they.
It's $100 million of dead cap this year.
That's just not
right. Right.
And the two possible options here are, well, 3. If he retires, my assumption is he would re-sign on a base deal for just that 1.165, no guarantees, nothing. and then they would spread it out as a post June 1st retirement, spreading the hit out over 23 and 24 for, I think it's 15 million this year and 25 million next year. Right.
Right. But that's accounting for the signing bonus. The reason why there's $100 million of dead cap is that there's this one-time $60 million player option payment plus the $40 million signing bonus. 60 plus 40 is 100. That's where you get the $100 million of dead cap, and that's the $40 million need to be spread out over 2024, 2025. Should there be some termination of his employment with the Packers, therefore he must be traded.
Yeah. Either he's the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers this upcoming season, or he gets traded.
You have to have a team willing to pay him $60 million.
Yep.
That would be an easy or difficult suitor to find.
Well, I think, there is one team where the parallels are very strangely aligning.
Okay.
That team is the New York Jets.
Okay. They have $60 million to spend?
I mean, they could create $60 million pretty easily to spend.
Okay.
And then obviously I think there would be some kind of restructure to his deal once he gets there. But
so he's just basically going to live out the Brett Favre career arc.
But the thing is, Matt, this is my problem with everybody discussing the Brett Favre career arc. Before he tore his bicep off the bone in whatever it was, week 12, week 13, that Jets team was 8-3. Like, the narrative that like the Jets Brett Favre experiment failed on the field couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, it failed off the field because
it definitely failed off the field.
He was texting pictures of his cock.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's going to argue that. I'm just saying on the field, the experiment was
an
not
impressive
bad.
hog, though.
I don't think that's what the Jets are signing Aaron Rodgers
clearly
for.
A prideful text.
Yeah, clearly. No joke there. But, I mean, look, Brett is a very different – I think Rodgers is a significantly better player at this point than Brett was. But –
and I think now that we're seeing what Brett Favre is involved in in Mississippi, stealing from the
poorest families in the country, that's just –
right. Anytime you're involved in welfare fraud – it's an easy choice. If you're comparing Brett Favre versus Aaron Rodgers is a better guy. Yeah. I'm not an Aaron Rodgers apologist.
No.
Okay. I'm a Dak Prescott apologist. I'm not an Aaron Rodgers apologist. Aaron Rodgers, way better guy than Brett Favre. But I do like Aaron Rodgers going to New York. I like that. I like that a lot.
And I mean, it just makes sense, right? Like the team is ready to win. I mean, you could see Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore. The line looks good at this point. You'll have Breece Hall coming back. Like there's there's a lot to like there.
And then defense was the top 10 defense down the stretch.
There you go. Right. And so if you're looking for that next, hey, here's this Hall of Fame quarterback, end of career, where is he going to go? The archetype is very similar to what Brady walked into in 2020 with the Bucs.
And it's a trade between conferences.
Yeah.
That makes it easier. It's not like an interdivision trade that would be necessary. It's like, hey, you're in this other conference. Let's talk about what's in our mutual best interests. We're trying to rebuild. We can't win with Rodgers. You can win with Rodgers. How do we make a deal?
Mm-hmm. And I think the other part of it, too, is you're starting to see, like, the Jets, if this works out for them, right, would be able to then, hand this off to whoever's next and not have to worry about, what do we do with Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, and, Mike White and all of that. Basically, they would be able to clean house, keep Mike White as the backup, call it a day, right? Just essentially hit reset on the quarterback room. I find that super interesting. And I actually kind of love the idea of it because I think, Jets fans need something to be excited about. And we hope that Zach Wilson would be it. He is absolutely not. Sorry.
I've very much enjoyed watching the Jets this year. I like the Jets. They're a team I appreciate very much how they've put this thing together. And if Aaron Rodgers makes them a better team,
which he does,
which he would,
yeah,
then and this is a win now.
Yeah.
It's a win now moment. The Bills seem vulnerable all of a sudden.
Yep.
Oh man, yeah. I claimed on the top 10 takeaways show that Josh Allen is post Apex in Dynasty.
Whoa.
But all that means is that he's never going to be as valuable in Dynasty as he was last season. That's not a hot take. And yet I was called a flip-flopper. Really, they really came after me this week. The audience didn't like that show. They didn't like the top 10 takeaway show. I'm not a flip-flopper. I've never been a raging Josh Allen enthusiast. That's never been me. I've always questioned his decision-making and his accuracy while also enjoying his rocket arm and rushing ability and what that means for fantasy football. Both things can be true. But as soon as a quarterback gets into his late 20s, they start rushing less. So for a lot of the same reasons that Lamar Jackson is post-Apex in Dynasty and his value is falling, so is Josh Allen's. It's just the natural evolution of a rushing quarterback. They peak earlier with their Dynasty value. These are the years when they can make the greatest difference for a fantasy team because of the rushing production with quarterbacks that can go out and rush for 10 touchdowns. That was my argument for why I would want Jalen Hurts over Dak Prescott, even though Dak Prescott has more high-performing seasons on his resume. He's still young, right? He's more of a sure thing. I get all that. But in Dynasty, I would prefer Jalen Hurts to Josh Allen at this moment. And that's only possible if Josh Allen is post-peak in Dynasty. That is not a hot take. It's simply true. There is also a slight possibility that Josh Allen's confidence, mechanics, whatever was short-circuiting in that Bengals loss continues into 2023. I think it's a remote possibility, but it is a possibility. And yet another reason why I prefer Mahomes, I prefer Jalen Hurts in Dynasty. Fight me.
How do you feel about Burrow in that discussion?
That is the next step. The next step is Burrow overtaking Josh Allen. We will see very quickly, very soon, right? We'll know right away next year how much Josh Allen is rushing. And the moment he starts rushing significantly less, the bottom is going to drop out of his dynasty value. That's not going to happen with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is one of, if not the most stable asset at the quarterback position in all of Dynasty.
Yeah.
And so if it were me on the clock in a 2-quarterback superflex league where you need an anchor QB1, right? You can mix and match your QB2 in a superflex 2 QB league.
Yeah.
You need an anchor QB, right? And so if I'm on the clock there, watch me take Burrow. We'll be doing plenty of mocks this year, so stay tuned. But watch me take Burrow. And on platforms like Prediction Strike, and Prediction Strike's the platform that treats players like stocks, the promo code is Underworld. And so the promo code Underworld, you get a free player share with a $20 deposit. And it's going to be difficult for Josh Allen to maintain his valuation in the player stock market that he achieved in the middle of 2022. He was the top performing quarterback of my lifetime. in fantasy football. We were talking about the return of the first-round quarterback in fantasy football, which I thought I would never see because of Josh Allen's production. And given his age and his production and efficiency through the first 8 to 10 weeks of the 2022 season, when you were living in that moment and you had Josh Allen stock on Prediction Strike, you had to consider selling. You had to. If you didn't, then you weren't in it to make money. You're just in it to watch the players go up and down. You're in for the thrill of it. But if you're a cool, cold, calculating killer on Prediction Strike, like our man Aaron Stewart, he does a Prediction Strike show on our Discord channel. Just go to the Player Profiler homepage, and there's a big button there to join our Discord. Check it out. He's about making money. And you can't get emotional about these players, and you can't get too absorbed in the performances, riding that wave, and just enjoying it, going back with your hand and touching the water wall. Feels good. At that moment, sell. That's what you should be doing. Sell at that very moment. When you touch the water wall, it's like, sell.
The other thing too, Matt, that we may start to have discussions about, we've seen what Brian Daboll did for Daniel Jones. There may be a narrative coming, and it may be true or false. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, Josh Allen had his best games without Brian Daboll. So I'm not going to be embracing that narrative, but we will hear it a lot. That will affect his stock price on Prediction Strike. It will.
Agreed. It will.
It will.
Because the thing,
it just will. It will.
And the thing is, like, especially if you're looking at this holistically, is the Bills as a whole, especially Allen, right? The loss that happened last week is the kind of loss that forces you to go back and reconsider all the decisions you made that got you there. And so really good organizations realize that, hey, this is just part of the outcome of results that can happen on any given Sunday. Organizations that are scared or timid will change their process. So we'll see which one it is that Buffalo decides to go, because staying the course, even after a really bad loss, right? The team is still really good. They have the depth at the right places. They've invested in the right spots. Yes, they need a wide receiver too. Yes, they need to find a way to have an adequate running game. But everything else was as is. You'll be fine. It was the 3 standard deviations away from normal outcome that happened, and that's fine. You have to live with that. You have to live with that.
Important note to take us out on. That is the show. Buffalo Bills. Stay the course. Hey, you like that video? Be sure to subscribe and activate those alerts so you get notified as soon as new videos drop. And be sure to check out PlayerProfiler.com. We have all the tools for you to dominate every type of fantasy league. We have a draft kit, Dynasty Deluxe, data analysis, DFS Dominator, and don't forget the player rankings to rule them all. Like that video, be sure to subscribe and activate those alerts so you get notified as soon as new videos drop. And be sure to check out PlayerProfiler.com. We have all the tools for you to dominate every type of fantasy league. We have a draft kit, Dynasty Deluxe, data analysis, DFS Dominator, and don't forget the player rankings to rule them all.